He's a beloved singer-songwriter, but that's not where his story begins. Today on the Modern Motherhood Podcast, I'm Julie Lyles Carr, and this episode just has so many incredible moments. He was adopted as a baby, and now he's an adoptive father. Get ready for some great laughs and some tears as I talk with Mark Schultz. So Mark, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Julie.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Wow, wide open. I was adopted when I was 2 weeks old. I always tell people it's the hardest 2 weeks of my life with the paperwork and everything. But I get the best parents in the world. I have an older brother who's 5 years older than me, a younger sister that's a year younger than me. You know, when people say, hey, let's adopt somebody because we think we can't have any more kids. And so they adopt somebody, and then like 9 months later, a new kid comes along. So that happened to us. And so, or I say to us, to my mom and dad. And so my sister's a year younger than me. So I'm the only adopted one. I'm sandwiched in the middle as the adopted kid. And then, gosh, I grew up in a small town where I played baseball. I was the pitcher. I played the quarterback, ran track. I played baseball. I did the whole, I did everything. And I was kind of the sports guy that did a little bit of music and loved writing songs as well, which is funny because my parents, my biological parents, they must have had some music ability, but my mom and dad have absolutely zero. So the fact that I write and sing songs by ear, and after sports were done, I said, I'd like to do music. And so I did. I graduated from Kansas State University with a marketing degree, moved to Nashville with $75 and my RX-7 packed full of all my stuff, which is not a lot of stuff, and ended up in Nashville and became a youth director on accident. I got duct taped to a bed by a bunch of seventh graders on a ski trip. And I stayed at that church for 10 years as a youth director and just started writing songs about what God was doing in their lives and their parents' lives. And then I did shows. They got bigger and bigger. I rented out the Ryman Auditorium, the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. It was packed. People came, and the record company came, and they said, hey, let's do a record. Let's see what happens. And that was in 2000. So that was 18 years ago. And I've been doing records. And now I got married to my best friend, Kate. We've been married for 13 years, and now we have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old. We just adopted a little girl from China last year, and we're in the process of adoption again.
Wow. So you are really in the thick of the parenting deal. Now, your start in music, it's interesting to me. I had an opportunity to interview J.J. Heller. And then, of course, we have Bart Millard's story that's just come out with I Can Only Imagine. And, both of them started in athletics without a lot of thought about music. And sounds like you had a similar kind of vein. So how do athletics, sports, and music, how does that correlate for you?
Well, sadly, I feel like I just got lucky that my heroes when I was in junior high, when I was, just a young person, we had these guys that were great in sports, and they were also in the choir, and they were in the special music groups, but they were also like the quarterback and the wide receiver and the point guard. And so I just always grew up thinking, well, yeah, that's just normal. You can be in music and you can be in sports at the same time. What I found out when I went through high school and got into college, that people just didn't do that. You were either a music person or you're a sports person. And I got to tell you, I think it's one of the greatest gifts that I had heroes in high school and junior high that were able to do both things, because I think it teaches you, gives you more depth as a person to be able to say, hey, I'm on a team and I'm doing a team sport and it's in this area over here. But also I can do music and I can venture out and write my own songs. And it's hard for a sports person, I think, to be emotionally, to let yourself go to a place where you just say, hey, I'm wide open, and because that's normally a sports thing. So I think it was such a rich thing getting to do both sports and music. And even today, my son, who we're homeschooling, our oldest one, we're out in the garage playing basketball and doing some things like that. And I'm writing songs. We're doing the podcast. So it's just a culmination of all that stuff comes together. It makes you more of a complete person, I think.
I love that you didn't have somebody saying to you, well, you've got to choose. It's got to be sports or it's got to be music, that you were allowed to have the bandwidth to explore both and to see what would happen. I think so often, well-intentioned, but in our parenting or in our mentoring of others who are coming up alongside, we'll tell them, well, you gotta zone in on the one thing. And there can be room for God to use several different avenues to make us more of that, as you say, that more complete person, well-rounded person that he has in mind for us. Now, you've been on the road for a long time now. You had this job that was primarily at a church, and then you went to more of life on the road. So how is life on the road for you? What have you learned along the way? And how do you and Kate keep your marriage strong and connected and healthy with you on the road so much?
You know what I'm proud of? Today, we dropped our kids off at our youngest two All of them have gone to a Montessori preschool, but we have one that's 2 blocks from here, and so that's why we chose that's the preschool, because it's the one closest to the house. But we always drop our kids off together, and now Ryan's home for homeschooling with me. But when the lady who runs the Montessori, she said, you know what? She said, it's so great to see you guys because obviously you love hanging out together. Y'all are always together to pick up and drop off, and your kids are happy, and you always are happy, loving people. And she said, I got to tell you, you just don't see that much anymore, that people are in sync like you are. And I think I was a youth director. Kate came back to help out at the church when she was in college and hung out with the 7th graders. And so she was a great fit. And so we hit it off. We just had a great experience together. And then when I was really hitting the road hard, she was in residency and medical school. And I remember she came home one day and she was like, hey, you're not going to see me anyway, so you might as well do a bunch of shows because you're just not going to see me. And so for those 8 years of our first 8 years of marriage, I was traveling all the time, and she was, staying up for 36 hours delivering babies. And then when we started to have kids, the learning process was, if I'm gone for a day, great. If I'm gone for 2 days, Kate's eyes get really big. And on the 3rd day, I can see she's losing hair. So she's like, you need to come home. So we just learned how to tour smart. And that is, I might even take Ryan with me. We'll just get up early in the morning, take the first flight out, go do the show that night, and take the first flight back and be back at, on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We left, Friday morning at 10 a.m. and back by 9 the next day. So 24 hours, I go out and come back, and we've just found that works really good for our family. I get to do what I feel like I was born to do, and entertain and share the Lord with people, and then come back and be a dad. So it's kind of finding the balance in that. So
is Kate continuing her medical practice at this time with all the kiddos, and you still touring?
So what's so funny is she did 8 years to be an OBGYN, and she did it for 2 years, and she was like the best OBGYN in Nashville. But when our first son was born, she was like, I get to see him on Sunday night, and I get to see him on Wednesday night because her schedule. And so she retired after 2 years from being an OBGYN. And now she's a founding member of this startup company that helps people keep their all their medical information in one spot on their cell phone. And so she works from home. And so she just texted me, but she's back in the office. And so we have breakfast together with the kids. We have lunch together. We have dinner together. We'll go for a walk here in a little bit together. And so it's just finding finding that place where we can go, hey, let's just all be together. And for us, that works the best.
I think it's such an encouragement to listeners out there because, I feel that we've had a long history of people feeling like they have to make a choice between, well, I'm going to pursue work I love, or I'm going to commit to my family, whether that means I come off the road and I don't tour anymore, or for mom, I want to see my kids more, so I'm just going to put away the career for, until they head to high school. And it's really encouraging, I think, to see that there can be ways to work it out. It does take intentionality. It takes some sacrifice. It takes some forethought, but it's such an encouragement to know that you guys have been able to do that. Now, your adoption story for you personally is a big part of your life. You talk about it a lot. How do you think that being adopted, and particularly sandwiched between 2 by birth siblings, how do you think that impacted you? Was it a big topic of conversation in your home, or is it just something you just kind of always grew up knowing and was just part of the landscape?
Well, 2 things. Number one, I think my dad was funny growing up. He would say, "What, son, you get your basketball skills from your dad. And you're fast like your dad was. You run hurdles like your dad." And if I would sing, he would go, you got your singing ability from your dad. And so, speaking about him.
Yeah.
And so I always felt like, man, I may be adopted, but somehow I got all my DNA from my dad. I don't know by what he says. But one of the things that I've learned, and it's what I've talked about on this record quite a bit, I have a song on there called Everything to Me, and it's a live version of this song. It's telling my birth mom, it's thanking her essentially and saying, you gave me up, but you gave me everything. And I'm so grateful for the life that I have. But it moved us to adopt our own daughter. And so I'm going to drop this bit of information on you because I feel like, man, if I've learned one thing about being adopted and God's love and God adopting us as children of God, this to me is the biggest thing that I've learned. And it would have taken me adopting a little daughter to know this. So when I was growing up, my parents never made me feel this way. This is just how I felt on the inside. Gosh, I want to excel at everything I want to do because I don't ever want my parents to think, man, we got a dud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We went out and we adopted a kid and he's just average. You know what I mean? And so, again, I was the quarterback in football. I was the leading scorer in basketball. I pitched in the state tournament at baseball. We won that game. Ran track and played baseball in college. Wrote songs. I've had 10 number ones. We sold 2 million records. I say we because my wife helps me write the songs. And so just excelling has been the way I've just thought, like, hey, I need to prove
it. To prove it. Mm-hmm.
So then my wife said, I think we need to adopt. And she showed me a picture of a little girl who was 8 months old from China, looking at the camera, you know, and my heart just exploded. And I just thought, we need to get her right now. So a few months later, we went and picked her up. And 2 things happened. We got her and they said, it's going to be at least a month before she starts to bond with you. And I thought, oh, man, that's a long time. Well, we took her back to the hotel. And, man, as soon as I held her, the thing was she didn't have to do anything. She didn't have to perform for me. She didn't have to win an award. She didn't have to show me that she was better than anybody else in the orphanage. Man, I just loved her for who she was. And it clicked in my head right there. I just thought, wow, my whole life has been about proving myself. But that's from a child's standpoint, looking at a parent, you know, looking at a father. Whereas a father looks back at the child and says, I just love you for who you are. I want you to be fully who you are, and I just want to love you and let that be what runs through you, not the fear of having to prove yourself. And so that's the biggest thing. And I thought, man, maybe since God's model is adoption and he adopted us into his family, and that's his blueprint for, I think, how we should be here on earth, maybe he's trying to say, hey, you folks who work at churches and youth directors and youth ministers and choir leaders, are you doing this? Are you running to prove yourself to be better than the Baptist church across the street or the Methodist church? Or, hey, mom who's trying to raise your kids, are you trying to raise better kids than the neighbors? Or are you trying to show God's glory through that? Or are you just saying, man, I'm loved? Ooh, it makes me cry to think about. Man, I am so loved. I'm so loved. And God sees me for who I am, not who he wants me to be, not needing me to be something. And so let me do my ministry that way. Let me love my kids that way, and let me not force my kids to be a certain thing to make me look a certain way so that people will say, wow, they've got it together, and wow, what a spiritual family, and God must be so proud of me because I've raised this certain family. Woo! Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, that's big news. Now, here's the struggle. They said our daughter would take a month for her to bond with us. And I was like, man, I took her back to the hotel. We gave her a little bath, and she was laughing and smiling and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, she gets us right off the bat. And we went back to the orphanage and we said, we don't need a month. We got it. We had it in a day. And they said, hey, hold on. She's not bonding with you yet. It's going to be another month before she bonds with you. What she's doing now is she's learned in the orphanage, if she wants to get fed, if she wants to be held, if she wants to get her diaper changed, she has to play up. Her smiling, her laughing, her, and I just went, oh my gosh, there it is.
There it is again.
You learned that. And I've been doing that my whole life, and she's only 8 months old and she knows how to do that. And so I realized then at that point in time, it's everybody. I think it's everybody, but that makes me stop every day and relax and go, okay, that's a natural tendency to do. And so I'm going to try to just go, okay, God, I'm going to spend time with you right now. Just fill me up with that love that you have for us that says, I love you. Go be who I made you to be in that love, and not go be who you think you're supposed to be for me to love you out of fear.
Oh, Mark, so profound. I mean, I think it's amazing that you had the experience of both being a child who was adopted and then to have adopted a child and see that flow through. And I can tell you, I mean, our children are children by birth. I myself was raised by my birth parents. Even birth kids have the same stuff. Same stuff. But I think for those parents who have children who they have built their families through adoption or through birth, to realize that, yeah, I think you're so right. I think we come embedded with trying to wave our hands and work our way toward a certain amount of attention. And particularly those of us who work in ministry, at the start of the year, I was going through some journaling and really thinking through some stuff and felt like that it was really dropped on my heart. You know, God is not the job. God is God. And I think that scramble that you're talking about, and I think we all share it, and I think those of us who are in vocational ministry may even have it to a certain, even higher toxic level, this thing that we feel like we've got to work it well to prove it because, you know, God's the job. But God is not the job. So I love what your daughter has been teaching you. Now, a lot of children who were brought into families through adoption have a deep desire to find their birth parents. One of my best friends is adopted, and we went through a long course of her seeking out her birth family. And it was interesting, the story that she had constructed in her head about who her birth family must have been and why they must have been compelled to get to a place to release her for adoption was actually a very different story than the real one. And so have you had that desire to try to connect with birth parents? And should adoptive parents feel threatened by that? What has been your experience as a child who was adopted?
Yeah. Growing up, I never had the same, I've been very happy in my family and I'm a guy too. So that could be, I think sometimes I have had friends who were girls that were adopted and were like, this is the biggest question mark of my life. And for me, it's not. I say, again, I wrote the song Everything to Me. And if people haven't heard it, I think they should go listen to it. But essentially saying, man, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity. But for me, there's something kind of fun about not knowing. And I say that because, when you go to a family reunion and you look around and you say, please don't let me be from this family. You're like, people, you're just like, don't make me like Uncle Tommy. I don't want to be like that. Please tell me I don't have any of his genes. So when I go to the family reunion, I look around, I'm just like, man, I enjoy not knowing where I come from. So, and that's kind of why I'm singing. And it's so, for my family, they're not musical, they're not anything like that. But it's like, I don't know where I come from. And so that allows me to be anybody I want to be. There's no ceiling for me to say, oh, you know what? In my family, this is what you do. You become a teacher or you become a coach or that kind of stuff. It's for like, well, for me, I may have some skills that aren't inherent in my family. And so that's been good for me. But I was just talking to my mom when we were talking about adopting another one. She said, if you want to look into your adoption and find who your birth mom is and birth dad, that's fine with us. You can do that. That wasn't always the case. I could tell my mom would be like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like when I was in high school. But now that I'm older and we have kids of our own, she said, I think that's fine. So that was really nice to hear. But still, I don't know that if I will or not. But in my mind, I always think I've done so many shows. And my hope is that my birth mom maybe has come to one of my concerts without even knowing. And I talk about being adopted. And she would sit back and she would hear the song I wrote to my birth mom. And she would smile and say, my little guy would be about this guy's age. And I hope my little guy ended up being as happy as this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
Loves what he's doing as much as this guy. That to me would just make me feel like, oh, that's great. And to go back on what we were talking about earlier about feeling the need to impress or the need to, I can always tell when I'm out of balance. And I don't know if this is you as well, or maybe people think this in a different way. When I go out and do a show, when I get standing ovations and people clap for the songs that I wrote and I feel like I'm giving it and they get it, and man, it's a standing ovation after every 3 or 4 songs. And my wife will tell you, I come back and I'm like Pac-Man after he's eaten a little pellet, he's like, invincible, feel great about everything. And I just feel so secure and so confident. And then that lasts for like the next day and I'm just like this. And then as the days go, it's just like that. And my body's just waiting for the next show. And mentally I'd say to myself, dude, you are out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
You are out of balance. Because what you're looking for is whipping it up on the outside for the outside to say, hey, this is your, so my inside would feel like, oh yeah, you're doing a great job. And what I realize what God wants me to feel is, hey, fill up on me, be okay on the inside, and that makes the outside okay.
Yeah.
Then
yeah.
Just give what you've got. But when you're looking at from the outside, and again, it's taken adoption to show me that, but that's when I know I'm out of balance.
So tell me about your creative process, because you've got this new album coming out called Follow, and you also are in the studio getting a Christmas album ready, which I love Christmas music and Christmas and all the things, and getting ready to go on tour. So you're this busy dad. You've got this combined career family where you're navigating through the kids and homeschool and all the things. What is your creative process like? Because in my mind, when I'm writing and doing things, I feel like I'm supposed to be in this beautifully appointed writing room that is clean and clear. And what I find is that I'm actually in the creative process sitting in a parking lot at a random soccer field waiting for a kid to come in and perfume my car with all of the after effect of running around in the Austin heat. So What is your creative process like? And how do you get to that place where you're hearing well from the Lord and writing, even if your lifestyle doesn't match your exact romantic picture for what that creative process should look like?
Well, it looks different than it used to. I mean, I used to lock myself in the chapel at the church where I was a youth director, put on the coffee at 8 o'clock at night after I was done hanging out with kids and going to Bible studies, and then write until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, drinking coffee, and then I could have like 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then come back and be youth director again. Mm-hmm. And I would write the best songs. Well, I thought they were the greatest, but when you write something at 3 o'clock in the morning, you have to actually wait until the next morning to wake up.
To really know, yeah.
either, oh man, I was right, that is awesome, or you go, oh, that's awful, or oh, hey, I heard that on the radio yesterday. So that's the process for that. But I'll tell you, I would write there, and you know where I would always write my lyrics? This sounds so funny to me, but here you get the album cover, and it looks so great, and it looks beautiful, and the record looks beautiful, and we go out and do the shows, and it's the lights, and that's the whole thing. It looks so pro. My favorite place, still to this day, to write lyrics for a record is in the copy machine room at the church. There's paper all around. There's a copy machine room. It smells like a copy machine room down there. And I sit at this little table with a little chair, folding chair, and there's like more paper than anybody needs at one time, which is good for me because I keep throwing it away. But there's something that I feel like there's no stress in that. The stress is off. There's no pressure. I'm writing songs in a copy machine room. Mm-hmm. And people will walk in and walk out of there, and I might stop and talk to them for a while and get some more energy for that kind of stuff. But to this day, I feel like, man, my best stuff is in the opposite. Well, it's just for me even to think this is a thing, but I just think it's so funny. Everybody expected Jesus to come on the big white horse and the big, everything. He's the king. He's coming through, but yet he's in this lowly little place and born in this tiny little manger in this place nobody would think like, oh yeah, that's where something great would come from. And a little bit, that's when I'm writing songs. These songs are born in those same places, of these places where you would think like, man, you really wrote in the copy machine room? That's really where you wrote He's My Son or Letters from More or whatever. And I feel like I'm not so stressed out to write it in a, you go to the record label and sit in a big room with all the guitars that famous people have signed, and there's a lot of stress. Can I make it happen? But I think God shows up for me in the copy machine room. So
I love that.
I try to do it in the morning when I'm fresh, because I realize when I'm hanging out with kids by 8 o'clock at night now, when I used to start, I'll look at my wife and I'll, you're telling your stories to your kids to get them to go to sleep, and I'm just on some wild tangent about something I'm making up, but I'm whispering it, and there's that little lamb that's in the corner going shh with the ocean waves. And I come out of that room and I'm looking like this, honey, what time is it? And she's like, it's like 8:15. I was like, let's go to bed. Yeah. Just can't even. I might be able to have a snack, but that's all I can do right now. So, So things have to happen for me early in the morning. Great.
Yeah, I do think the creative process prime times have definitely changed for me too through the years and with kids, because that late night gerbil thing used to be the best time. That was when it all came together. And by that 8:30, 9 o'clock slot PM, done. The only creative thing, the only decision I can seem to make is which pajamas. Should there even be pajamas? I don't know. So yeah. Yeah, parenting does change the creative process. It gives us better stories, I think. It does. Uh-huh.
I remember the time it's like, hey, we got to find the matching top to the bottoms of these pajamas, and now I just walk. They don't have to match.
No, our shoes don't even have to match at my place anymore. We're very relaxed on the whole thing. Yeah.
My kid, I'm going to make fun of him just a little bit, but I love him so much. My first son really loves to have things in order. Hey, follow the rules, go by the book, put your seatbelt on, and he's 6. Gus, the second one, who's 4, is the opposite of that. So Gus has got his shoes on backwards. He didn't care. Puts his underwear on backwards. I'm like, buddy, that shouldn't even, nothing about those two things should even feel right. It's like, I like it like this, Dad. I'm like, you're a special, special person. So I think it's so interesting. They come from our same genes, but they're just, they're two different. They're yin and the yang of each other.
I think the fact that your boys actually wear underwear, I mean, y'all be fancy. I mean, I gave up on that. I was like, I'm just trying to not raise a colony of nudists, and anything that gets us beyond that phase, I'm like, whatever. Undergarments, whatever. That's luxurious. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, people don't see those, just what's on the outside.
Yeah, just on the outside. So back in just a moment with our conversation conversation with Mark Schultz. In this season of Thanksgiving, I want to challenge you to not just have Thanksgiving at your house, but to respond. Want to know how? Check out Compassion International. It's a month of gratitude, blessings, and family traditions. And it's a time that you can show your Thanksgiving to a child in need. True gratitude always comes with a response. Celebrate Thanksgiving this year by putting action to the occasion. For just over $1 a day, a child in need will have the medical, spiritual, and educational care that they need because of you. Sponsor a child today through Compassion International at compassion.com/allmomdoes and make your heart of Thanksgiving last all year long. Now, you were a marketing major, as you mentioned, in college, and I think this is really an interesting little topic because I love marketing, I love communications, all that kind of stuff. But when you're in the creative lane, when you're a content creator, and we've got a lot of listeners who are, you feel so much pressure that the success of how that content gets out there is on you. And you actually have the background and education and tools to say, okay, I've got this great album that I've written, I've got this great music, and now I've got this education that could help push it through. How do you keep all that marketing background and yet the call and the doors that God wants to open? How do you keep that all in check and balanced? Because I think, we do have a culture that tells us if you just hustle enough, work harder than anybody else, on and on and on. And yet we're also a culture that is built on the viral phenomenon. Like, who could have ever thought that Charlie bit my finger would, be the thing that would be the most viewed YouTube video ever? There was no marketing plan behind that. So how do you keep those things somehow in balance and healthy? And how do you know when you're getting off track?
Yeah, so for me, and having the marketing background, what I do now is the inverse of what I learned in marketing. So in marketing, it's all about how to exploit something to make it huge, how to go big. And what I do, what I've learned on accident doing music, is how to keep it small. Mm-hmm. And let me explain what I mean by that. When I wrote my first record, I came to Nashville so that I could be a recording artist and I could go on tour and I could be big and I could sell out arenas and all that kind of stuff. So that was my mindset. So I was chasing after record companies and saying, here's my record, tell me who I am and tell me who my audience is and how you can make me big. And I was trying to market myself to what they thought would be, great. What happened was they said, well, hey, we're not interested. And so I became a youth director. And then, the youth minister came to me and said, hey, we got a guy in the youth group and he's got cancer and his dad's really struggling. Could you write them a song? And so I wrote them a song. And then they said, hey, you were just on the mission trip with the kids. Can you write a song about the mission trip and what you guys experienced? And then I said, yeah. And so we sang it on Sunday, and then the kids are singing about their experience of the mission trip, and the parents are listening to the song and feeling like, oh, man, we're on the mission trip with them. It opened up the doors to what happened. And then there was a song I wrote, Remember Me, that was about kids who, when they graduated from high school and they were in our youth program, we'd go and visit them every year at their college and have breakfast and lunch and dinner with them. And I wrote that song on the way there to visit those kids to let them realize that, hey, we're still cheering for you and God's still in your life and he remembers you, and remember him when you see a sunset, when you see the Bible, just focus on God. And so what I realized was when that first record came out finally, I was like, okay, this is so sad, but I'm gonna sell 500 records. All the people in my church are going to buy this record, and that's the only records I'm going to sell. Well, it's almost a gold record. It's almost 500,000 records. The reason why is I realized without reason at the time, almost every church has folks who are struggling and walking through illness. Mm-hmm. Almost every church goes on mission trips, and they have this experience, and they want to talk about it to their church. Almost every church has kids who are graduating and leaving and going on to college, and they want to send them off with a song that they can say, hey, we love you and we're thinking about you. And so when I kept it small and real and I was writing about the things that I knew about and the things, it just took off and exploded because it was like those were real and they resonate with people. And so they continue to resonate with people outside of our church. What happens after that is you go, oh, that's what a hit song is. Okay. Oh, that's what people are looking for. So when you start to write songs, when you put your marketing brain on that says, how can we make this big? Then you start to write songs that sound like they're coming from a deep, good place, but what they are missing heart. Mm-hmm. But they have the right sound. And I think that's what a lot of people start to focus on after they've had a little success, and they start to go, oh, okay. I think the magic of it is to keep it small and write about what's real and write about the heart of it. And the heart of it, then, if it's got the essence, and it's got the heart of what God's doing in you, and He's got all that, then songs that shouldn't be on the radio get on the radio because people go, that thing's got something on it. Whereas you can craft a whole nother record with the marketing brain to say, oh, it's going to hit all these different audiences, and I'm not saying as much, but it sure sounds good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Those records go and off the table. So for me, people said, hey, what's the music business like? And I always say, I don't know, and I don't want to know, because my mind totally goes to the wrong place. But I say my most comfortable spot, my most successful place is hanging out with kids, hanging out with families, getting on the piano and going to the copy machine room.
Yeah.
And you got to meet me there.
I love that. You're such a storyteller, and I think that comes through again and again in your music, is telling the stories that you know, that you've experienced. So give us the story behind this newest album, Follow. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so when I first came to Nashville, I thought, I want to be a songwriter. I want to do music and all that kind of stuff, and every door was shutting. And it was like God had opened up this door to a closet, and there were clothes in there. And I looked at the clothes, and I said, I don't fit those clothes. There's nothing in there that I fit. And so I became a youth director for 5 years, and I started writing the songs about what I saw the kids doing in their life that they were going through and what God was doing in their life. And 5 years later, it's like God opened the closet, and I was like, oh my gosh, I fit in those clothes now. But I didn't have enough to say 5 years before to fit in those clothes and say, but now I can walk around comfortable in those clothes, and I have something to say. So my wife and I, as we go through the different seasons that we're in, I was like, man, am I following to follow, or who am I following? And I realized, what is it inside of the song Follow comes from? What is it that, cause several different places. I wrote it about a girl actually who had a strained relationship with her family, and she could choose the awful guidance of her family, what they were following, or she could choose to follow Christ. And I thought, man, that's my life as well, to say, what breaks my heart? What do I say, man, I want to fix that, and I want to go do something about that. And it all comes around to, what would I do if I was absolutely certain that God was with me? What would I do if I felt God following me, not saying, hey, go do this, and here's every step you need to take, but, hey, what would I do if I say, God, will you have me go do that? And if so, what's the very next step? Not what's the full picture. What's just the sense of, that was me coming to Nashville and feeling like, I don't know why, I just feel like I'm being pulled to Nashville. I don't know why, I feel like I'm called to be a youth director, even though I ripped his number up and threw it in the trash can because I was allergic to kids. But it ended up changing my life. And then even getting married, I was so scared to get married, and I was like, oh my gosh, but I felt God was saying, you're a moron if you don't marry this girl. And so I did, and now it's the best. We're best friends, and it's the greatest thing. So sometimes it's not even the thing that I feel like is the obvious choice, but it's the pull that I feel in my heart. And what would it look like if I really followed that and did it with the confidence that God was with me? And so that's the whole theme of that song. And then this whole record just came out of my life experience. So I've got a song on there for your audience would like this. It's called Time Goes So Fast. It's about, man, I'll just tell you this. When I was writing this, I was at the chapel, and one of the moms, they had the prayer banquet where they send the kids off, and they said the prayer over their kids at the dinner, and we send them off. And she said, what are you writing? I said, oh, it's a little song. And she goes, what's it about? And I said, well, I'm not sure you want to hear this. And so I started reading her the lyrics, and it was like, you came out crying, next you were crawling 2 steps for every fall, bedtime and stories, waking up each morning to little footsteps down the hall. And I keep thinking, time goes so fast. You can't slow it down. You can't hold it back. Blinking, it's gone. So I'm holding on because time goes so fast. And that takes through the kids growing up. And, man, the last, you don't want to know all this, but I'm just going to tell you. The last verse is, loading up the Camry, packing up the memories, stop to kiss your mom goodbye. You're saying so long, and we're going to be strong, at least till you're out of the drive. Time goes so fast.
Yeah. I'm
crying now. And here's my son in the kitchen with me.
You are going to have people bawling in the carpool pickup line. So I really think there should be like some kind of merchandising option that's like special Kleenexes that come with the album. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I could see a whole line of things. Yeah. A waterproof mascara that comes with the album.
The time goes too fast mascara.
Yeah. I like that. I would do it in kind of an inky black and a softer brown. I'm just brainstorming here. So
I love at a concert when somebody comes up to me and goes, like this the other day, they came up to me, and this one mom comes up to me, and she's just got mascara running down her face. She goes, okay, first of all, I loved your songs. I don't like you very much right now, but I loved your songs.
Well, we are thrilled to hear about your journey and the way that your adoption story is playing into building other families, the way that it comes into your albums. And, you know, I'm going to let you just destroy more mascara jobs across the U.S. I want to help you do that. Well, Mark Schultz, thanks so much for being with us. And you are already so beloved by our listeners. It's just an honor to get to have this time with you. Thanks so much for all the incredible story gathering and then story sharing that you provide through your music, and just all the best to your family.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go make sure my kids have underwear on.
Oh, well, you know, you have higher standards than I do. You can find out more about Mark's music and adoption journey and tour dates and all the rest at markschultzmusic.com. I'd love to connect with you on social media. I love me some Instagram, and I'm on all the places, Facebook and Twitter, as Julie Lyles Carr. Check out AllMomDoes.com and AllMomDoes on the socials. It's a dynamic community of bloggers and moms just like you, wrestling with the same things, looking for ideas and inspiration, and you'll find all kinds of great resources and laughs and friends at AllMomDoes. Let's give some love to Donna Toady, our awesome producer, and to Rebecca Beckett, our fearless content coordinator, who work so hard to make sure all these great episodes make it out to you each week. Do us a favor and subscribe and share and give us a shiny 5-star rating and review. That helps us get the word out about the podcast to others. Next week, she kind of accidentally started her own little revolution when it comes to how we think about celebrating all the holidays, from New Year's to Valentine's to Easter and more. Becky Kaiser of Sacred Holidays joins me on the next episode of the Modern Motherhood Podcast. See you next week.